You're listening to the Telltale channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. So the first article I wanted to take a look at is by the BBC. It actually just came out. The title of the article is Jehovah's Witnesses Sued Over Historical Sex Abuse. Demonetized. There's a huge swell of Jehovah's Witness stuff going on at this immediate moment. So let's give this article a read. This is by Claire Jones, and again, it's by the BBC. The BBC is a, what would you call it? It's a UK news organization, I guess you could say. I believe it's UK. It's not a US news organization at the very least. So the fact that this is getting international coverage is actually really, really good sign. Anyway, it's by Claire Jones, released February 4th, 2020, so about a week ago at the moment this is airing. Let's give this a read and see what it has to say. At least 20 former Jehovah's Witnesses are suing the group over historical sexual abuse they say they suffered. The group has a policy of not punishing alleged child sex abuse unless a second person alongside the accuser has witnessed it, or an abuser confesses. This is going back to the two-witness rule, which I'll explain in a minute if this doesn't get into it. It says its elders comply with child abuse reporting laws, even if there's only one witness, though, and always tell police if a child is in danger. But one former elder said it had been failing to involve the authorities. John Viney, who says he was abused between the ages of 9 and 13 by a distant family member who is an active Jehovah's Witness, added children were still being abused and the religious organization was inadvertently protecting their abusers. Let me tell you guys how this works, okay? So up here in the article it says, the group has a policy of not punishing alleged child sex abuse unless a second person alongside the accuser has witnessed it, or an abuser confesses. This is how it works. What they're talking about here is something called the two-witness rule. It's intended for financial transactions, contract signings, things like that. If you make an agreement with somebody or something in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, where, you sell a mule to somebody or something like that, someone else has to be present for that transaction to be valid, basically. There have to be two witnesses to the transaction who were there and aware of what was happening and can testify to it. So Jehovah's Witnesses picked up this whole two-witness rule that really applied to like contract signing and things like that, and they applied it to more than just civil cases, and they applied it to criminal cases. So ultimately what Jehovah's Witnesses desire is to set up their own government. That's what they want in the end. And they run the religion like their own government. They have investigators. The elders will go out and investigate things. If somebody claims that you have a girlfriend or you're smoking cigarettes or something, they will get with you. They will follow you. They will talk to you. They'll call you in and they'll pray. And Jehovah will give them a message, whether or not to believe you, things like that. It's a whole thing. They're basically trying to run their own government. So they aren't just applying the two-witness rule as read in the Bible to civil cases like it was supposed to be in the Bible. They're applying it to everything that the elders do. So if there are not two witnesses to some event, crime, contract signing, whatever, it basically didn't happen. They will write it down, they'll keep tabs on it, they'll watch, but they have been told not to report it to the police. They have been told not to report it to anybody, except maybe the governing body, unless there are two witnesses. So two witnesses means if somebody is being sexually abused, there has to be either a second victim to come forward and say, hey, this person did this to me, or there has to be a witness to the event, like somebody had to walk in and see it. So now the victim can report it and the witness can report it. So for years, decades even, since Jehovah's Witnesses had this rule, the two-witness rule, what people would do is they would walk into a kingdom hall, they would offend, they would do something criminal. It would get reported or it would come out. The elders would know about it. They'd make a note of it. They would send that note to the governing body. Governing body would put that name in a database and move on with their lives. And that person would move to the next congregation, move to another congregation. And since there weren't two victims or two witnesses, nobody can say a word about it. It's against the rules for the elders to report it to the police or anybody else without having two witnesses. So this person would offend, move to another congregation, and re-offend, and nothing would happen to them. They'd move to a third congregation, re-offend, a fourth congregation, re-offend. This would happen for decades. There are people out there who had been doing this for decades. And in a little bit, we're going to hopefully be talking about this. There is a database that Jehovah's Witnesses have that's been confirmed that is basically a list of sex offenders that have never been reported to the police. And they refuse to turn it over. So anyway, that is a description of the two-witness rule. Let's continue reading this article and see what else it says. The way that Jehovah's Witnesses handle matters within the congregation. It's a closed shop, he told the BBC's Victoria Derbyshire program. I know for a fact now that there are parents that haven't done anything about the abuse of their children by others because they don't want to bring reproach on Jehovah's name. Oh my God, I heard that phrase constantly when I was little. Don't bring reproach on Jehovah's name. Mr. Viney's own daughter, Karen, was abused as a child and has since spoken out about it publicly. But when she left the organization, Mr. Viney disowned her, something he has regretted ever since. Yeah, I honestly can't blame him for doing that because he was brainwashed just like the rest of us were. I disowned my brother. I shunned my brother when I was in the religion. I know better now. And Mr. Viney knows better now too, so I can't blame myself for shunning my brother when I was brainwashed, and I can't blame Mr. Viney for it either when he was brainwashed. The important part is that he's not doing it anymore. That's what matters. When I was an elder and a dad, I put being an elder absolutely first, he said, and that was a mistake. Mr. Viney said he had eventually reported his own abuser to the police in 2019 after years of being too ashamed, only to be told the man had gone on to abuse other children and died in prison. At least the guy got caught. At least he got caught. That's the important part, you know? He died in prison. You can heal now, as best you can. What would have happened if I had the courage and common sense to come forward at the time? It's not about common sense. Jehovah's Witnesses try to shut that down as best they can. I've talked about this before, but okay, this is something called the Influence Continuum. I have talked about the Influence Continuum many times before, but Jehovah's Witnesses are obsessed with destructive and unhealthy influence. So this is really what makes the difference between a destructive cult and a religion, ultimately, in a lot of ways. Are they encouraging you to rely on doctrine for your moral compass, or your conscience for your moral compass? Are they encouraging free will and critical thinking, or dependency and obedience? Jehovah's Witnesses destructively influence their members. It's not about common sense, as he says here. Saying that if I had the courage and common sense to come forward at the time, saying that is giving yourself less credit than you deserve. Jehovah's Witnesses do everything they can to shut that down in people, and you were brainwashed just like I was brainwashed. But we're out now, and we're free thinkers now, and we can do the right thing now. Thomas Beale, a solicitor representing some of the former members, said they had decided to seek compensation after asking the group for an apology, only to find it denying what has happened or refusing to engage. Those taking the legal action say the organization is vicariously liable for the abuse they say they suffered. Some claim it was negligent. It was most definitely negligence. They have a list of abusers, and they are refusing to turn it over. They have had this list of abusers racking up for decades and decades, and they're not turning it over. Look, abuse like this happens in society, all parts of society. That's true. It's not just a Jehovah's Witness problem. It's not just a Catholic Church problem. It's not just a Mormon problem. This happens everywhere, okay? It's not just a cult problem. It's an everything problem. The issue is, how do those groups handle it when it happens? The Catholic Church picked up these preachers, moved them from parish to parish to protect them from legal consequences, and put other people in harm's way as a result. Jehovah's Witnesses refused to report this stuff to the police, and to this day are still refusing to turn the database over. It's an embarrassment for them. I don't like how they're handling it. You know what happens if I hear about something like that in my life? I report it to the police. It's not even a question. That's what 99.9% of the people watching this would probably do, because it's the right thing to do. Just report it to the police. Why is that so difficult? Instead, you've got these religious groups like Jehovah's Witnesses and like Catholics covering it up. Why? I don't get what the mindset is of the leadership that they would give that order. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me. One woman, Emma, not her real name, said after she'd been abused, she'd been visited by elders who had repeated scripture about why we should keep it in-house, not follow the laws of the land. Oh, that's fascinating. Because Jehovah's Witnesses are always talking about following the laws of the land. Pay back Caesar's things to Caesar, blah, blah, blah. Up until it's inconvenient for them. Seriously, abuse like this it happens in society. This happens. I'm not going to demonize Jehovah's Witnesses for having this take place in their religion, because this does happen in society. I'm going to demonize Jehovah's Witnesses for what they do when they find out about it. That is a problem. That is a problem for me. She had been asked to recount explicit details, with the elders glaring at me. They're not therapists. They're random, normal people. They should not be dealing with this. They're not therapists. They're not investigators. Why are they doing this? Give the name to the police and move on with your life. Several former members have also told BBC News they were made to discuss their allegations with elders at a judicial committee while their alleged abuser sat next to them. Yeah, I've heard of that too. In fact, there was one case where this kid, I believe he was 12 when the abuse started happening. There was basically a ministerial servant who's, I guess, like a deacon, kind of. A ministerial servant took this kid under his wing when he turned 12, which I've had elders take me under their wing and take me out into service and try to teach me, get me baptized, and all that other good junk, right? That's not uncommon. But when this ministerial servant took this 12-year-old under his wing, he started molesting the kid. It continued on for 4 years. The kid got baptized. He was 16 years old now, and he was baptized. And guess what happened? Jehovah's Witnesses, when he told the elders what had happened to him as a kid, the elders disfellowshipped him for homosexual activity. Disfellowshipped the kid, the victim, for homosexual activity. How wrong is that? That is absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. This kid loses everything. Loses his friends and his family. Everything. Has the rug pulled right out from under him for being a victim of somebody else's sick, twisted life. It's absolutely wrong, and I can't stand it. So that's what we're dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses at the moment. I'm really, really glad to see Jehovah's Witnesses being covered on the BBC and other outlets right now. They're getting an awful lot of coverage at this moment.